Welcome to the Complete Game Podcast, where we're all about baseball with Ethan Dungan, owner of Glovehound Baseball Glove Repair Shop, Rick Finley, founder of MD&I Baseball Academy, and the creator of George Foster Baseball, the MVP himself, Reds Hall of Famer George Foster. I'm your host, Greg Dungan. Now let's talk baseball.
All right.
Well, welcome back, fellas.
Welcome.
Nice to have everybody back in the room. This week, we're going to be talking about catchers, and all things behind the plate. So the title of the episode is What's the Catch? And you're going to see why we asked that in a little bit. I want to let you know that where you can find the podcast. So you can find the podcast at Apple Podcasts. You can find it at Amazon Music. You can find it at Spotify. You can find it at iHeartRadio. All the places that you would normally listen to podcasts, you can find this show. You can also find it on our website at CompleteGamePodcast.com. And you can find it on YouTube, Facebook, and eventually we'll have the Instagram account rolling. So just wanted to let you guys know where all you can find the show. All right. So we're going to start today with our Name 5 segment. And we're going to talk about naming 5 favorite catchers and why they are your favorites. Now, there's only one person who has not gone first in a Name 5.
And that's you.
And it's this guy.
It doesn't matter.
So my list is going to be loaded up with guys that George played against, played with, or may have known. So, and these aren't just because George is on the podcast. These are my favorite catchers. So okay. I just want to let you know.
We trust
These are my favorite catchers, okay? Obviously, we start with Johnny Bench. Johnny Bench is my favorite catcher. Yeah. He is my favorite catcher of all time. He was my hero growing up.
Wonder
why.
I
love the guy. And, really why my aunt was a huge Johnny Bench fan. And she was like our cool aunt that took us places. She was single and I was one of 3 boys. And so she would take us cool places and do things with us and whatever. She was just fantastic. I love my Aunt Linda to death. And she was a big Johnny Bench fan. And so she used to take me to ball games. And so you just kind of pick that up, when you're with whoever the adult is that takes you places. And I just really learned to love him watching him play. And it's funny because for a large part of the time I was watching baseball, he wasn't even catching. Because I was born in 73. So, when you guys were winning World Series, I was 2 and 3 years old. Right. Okay. So but I remember him sort of later 70s as I'm getting into Little League. I'm 6 years old. I'm getting into Little League. I'm remembering him as, in those later years, 80, 81, 83, when he was playing third base, he was playing outfield, he was playing first base, he was, doing whatever. And so, but I'm all the while living, years behind myself watching. She had all the, memorabilia and some things about him. And I'm reading books about him as I'm growing up, his biographies and all that stuff. So I knew all about those times. I just didn't get to see him play. So that's why I love YouTube so much, because I've been able to go back and watch him play from his big years, like 70, 72, those early years when he was really tearing it up. So that was a good one. Johnny Bench I loved because not only was he just absolutely the best there ever was, the guy was the measurement of all catchers.
In my opinion.
He was it, yeah. So I loved that about him. I loved the fact that he was great defensively and he could hit. That was good.
For power.
And he was a good personality. Again, I'm not watching him play, but I'm watching a baseball bunch. Right. So I'm seeing him, I'm seeing Johnny Bench, the personality, right? And I'm seeing him on Hee Haw, and I'm seeing him on, all these different places where he would pop up on television and, whatever. So I learned to love him from a lot of different angles. And he was my favorite. Second one.
Stalker.
The second one was Gary Carter. And I know I took your guy. I know.
My list is getting smaller and smaller.
I know. Well, I'm going to have you talk about these guys from a completely different angle.
Yeah.
So
all right.
Hang in there. But Gary Carter was, he was the next in line in all of our minds. And I watched Gary play because he came a little later and I watched him play with the Expos, but then I watched him play with the Mets, when you guys were with the Mets.
Right.
And so he also absolutely excellent in defense, but he could also hit. Great baseball mind. I loved a lot of things about Gary Carter. My third person was Carlton Fisk. I absolutely loved Carlton Fisk.
Tear this list up.
I'm sorry.
You're not going first again.
Well, I'll tell you what. George, if I thought of the same people you did, then I'm.
No, I made sure I put 15 catchers down. There you go.
then that's impressive. Carlton Fisk, I loved because of the way he commanded the game. You know, guys would say that playing a game when Carlton Fisk was playing took way longer than playing a game with anybody else because he was, slow back and forth to the mound, and he'd go out there until the umpire would make him come back, and he was, constantly just controlling the pace of the game. That pitchers would just do what he said because it was just easier because he was so hard-headed.
They trusted him.
Yeah. But he studied and he knew the batters, and he was there was no question Pudge was in control of what was going on. And that's the other interesting thing is when Ethan was coming up and he's following Rodriguez and he keeps saying Pudge, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's Carlton Fisk. I didn't, he was the guy I knew that as that. So I loved Carlton Fisk. He played hard. He was out there to win. He was out there to if you're going to do it the best you could possibly do it. And I admired that, and I admired the way he approached the game. So those three guys, and then Tony Pena with the who I will remember as a pirate.
Yes.
Even though I remember him as a pirate and as a cardinal.
Without the patch on his eye.
Yeah. A pirate and a cardinal, and mostly Tony Pena for the the leg out. He was one of the early guys to do the leg out. May have been the first guy to do the leg out. I don't know, but he was.
Manny Sanguin.
Oh, Manny, yeah.
Oh, yeah, Manny Sanguin.
So he was, but Tony Pena, the thing I love about Tony Pena, not only was he a great player, he played, and these guys played a long time. That's the thing. Carlton Fisk played for 24 years. Yeah.
That's a
long. And he caught for 24. Right. Tony Pena caught for 18 years. I mean, these guys could still be doing it. I mean, they were so good at it. But Tony Pena, I will never forget. I watched a special on Tony Pena one time, and the quality of human being is he was an amazing human being. The guy came from nothing in the Dominican, working rice fields. His dad was a farmer. His mom was a teacher. He had said in the interview that when you did the kind of work they did, you tried your very best to be good at baseball because, it got you out of there. But the first thing he did was go back and start giving back to his community immediately.
They're great in doing that.
Yes, they are.
And he to this day he owns 5 farms, and doesn't make a dime on any of them. They just exist to employ people.
Great.
His family operates.
What a great humanitarian.
Yeah, his family operates one of the largest bottled water manufacturing facilities in Dominican because clean water is a real issue down there. Just an interesting story. The president of the Dominican came to Tony at one point in time, according to this thing that I watched, and asked, "You've done so much for the country. What can I do for you?" And Tony said, "You can pave the road from the highway to my town." And that's what he did. That was his one request was you could get the road paved so that my people can get to the highway. That's great. What a great
insight.
Yeah, what a great human being. And another thing that we'll talk about later was he transitioned to managing. So one of the many catchers who transitioned to managing. So that I loved about Tony Pena. And finally, a guy I never saw play, but a guy I've always loved was Yogi Berra.
Yogi Berra.
And you know what's funny? Yogi is known for all the funny things that he said, which a lot of times aren't even necessarily exactly what he said, but
funny, very funny,
very funny guy. But he also put up Hall of Fame numbers.
I know.
We think of him as that guy who says the funny stuff, and as a
jokester.
Yeah, and he cemented himself as a legend and a fixture in the game. Forever, both as a player and as a personality and as a manager. So great. I would have liked to have seen him play. I've seen film, but
he's a short guy too. Probably only 5'8", 5'9".
Yeah.
5'7".
5'7". Got it right here.
So the connection would be George played with Johnny Bench. You played with Gary Carter. You would have played against Tony Pena. You would have played against Carlton Fisk.
And with the White Sox, Carlton Fisk.
That's right. And for that time you were with the White Sox, yes. And then Yogi Berra had been a previous manager of the Mets before you got there, in the mid-'70s.
Well, my roommate, Ken Griffey Sr., played with the Yankees, so Yogi was there, I think, as a coach.
Okay. That was my next question, because I know he coached both the Yankees and the Mets.
Right.
And so he might have been somebody that you may have met somewhere along the line, or at least knew something about.
Most of the golf outings.
Yeah. Anyway, those are my 5 guys. Those are
that was pretty good.
my people.
Those are.
All right. So, Ethan, who do you have?
I'm going to bring us up to be a little more current here.
Oh, no, current guy. Okay.
My first guy, the question is favorite catchers, and this is ironic because for the majority of my baseball fandom, he was my least favorite catcher. But that is Yadier Molina.
Can't say it on air. Can't say that on air.
Well, I just did.
Okay. Which one though? Which one you say?
Yadier Molina.
I thought you said Molina. But the plug for that, the dad made all 3 brothers catchers.
Yes.
And all 3 of them got a chance to make it to the major league. And that's what I wanted to say earlier, that catching will get you to big leagues quick, especially if you're a switch hitter or left-handed hitting catcher.
Yeah.
Those things will help you to get to the major league on a quicker pace.
Yeah, Jose and Benji Molina.
And Benji.
Right.
Yeah.
But the thing about Yadier Molina is he just was undoubtedly the best defensive catcher of my time. And he was a Cardinal, and that was the time when the Cardinals and the Reds were really kind of beefing a lot, and he's always ended up being in the middle of a lot of those fights, and so I never liked him very much
Because of that, right?
Yeah,
Him and Brandon Phillips.
When I loved Brandon Phillips, so I'm like he's my guy's enemy. Like I can't like him. But as I got older, I just had such a tremendous amount of respect for him. The leadership that he provided to that Cardinals team.
Yeah.
Yes.
The longevity.
I was going to say, another guy who caught for a long time.
For a long time.
Yes.
And he was a Jordan athlete, which was always cool. He had the Jordan catcher's gear.
Oh,
not,
sure did.
Okay.
Yeah, and not everybody just gets to have
sure
that.
don't.
So definitely earned some respect for him. Let's see. My number 2 guy, I'm going to go with Salvador Perez. A guy who's still getting it done. He's kind of the last of that slightly older generation.
Yeah.
He's the last guy from the 2015 Royals World Series team that's still playing. A guy who from what I understand was just a great personality in the locker room, great leader. Always managed to get it done with the bat too, which is cool. He had that huge 2021 season, and he hit 48 home runs and 140 something RBIs.
That broke the record catching.
I believe it did. Yeah. So he's not far behind. He's not far behind Brian McCann in home runs. He's not far behind Johnny Bench in home runs either. So if he gets a couple more years in there, he could be top 5 home runs all time for a catcher. So we'll see. He's still going strong. But always cool to get to see him play. Let's see. Number 3, I'll go with JT Realmuto, a guy who's still got some life in him. But I picked him because of his pop time. He's led the league in pop time since 2017, and before that, he was still top 5 in pop time. But a guy who averages a 1.5 or a 1.85 in game.
Good.
So that's not just checking it on the field in practice. That's in game numbers.
That's awesome.
And that's very impressive. And another guy who gets it done with the bat as well. So it's cool to see him with the Phillies. He was kind of down there grinding it out with the Marlins for a while.
With the Marlins.
And then they got rid of all their talent.
Everybody out of here.
Yeah.
We can't pay you.
But always loved watching JT Realmuto. Let's see.
Those are good.
I got a couple here. I'm trying to figure out which ones I want to say.
Your time's running. Tick, tick, tick.
No, okay. I'll go another one here. I'll mention my Pudge, Ivan Rodriguez.
That's what I had.
All right.
So he's number 2 all time.
That's 5
in,
off of my list. 5.
Yes.
I'm sorry, he's number 1 in Gold Gloves all time. So with 13, so you can't not mention him.
Yes,
Right.
13.
But the other thing I want to say about Pudge is that he had a very popular glove model with Wilson. He had a glove called the Pudge.
Yeah.
So that's it's always cool when you see, Jordan has the shoes. Pedroia had the DP15 model glove. So it's always cool when you get a piece of equipment that is kind of pioneered by one player and it continues to go on even after they're playing. So it's always cool to see that. And I still work on, I don't know, probably 3 to 5 Pudges every single year, the catcher's mitt, just because it was so popular at the time. So that was a big deal in the glove world for sure. It was cool, kind of orange, tan, and black, and they would be different models of that, year to year. But definitely have to mention his influence there. And another guy who played forever, he played for 21 years from 91 to 2011. So not a guy that I got to see a lot, but definitely a legend at the position for sure. And then I'll go, last but not least here, I'll go Jose Trevino. Jose Trevino has a special place in my heart because I got to work on his glove. But
who's Jose? Hey, hip hip Jose.
But he is a platinum glove winner, so you got to give him his flowers there.
Did you repair his glove?
I did, yeah.
You did?
Yeah, with the platinum labels on it. So that was pretty cool.
It was the coolest glove I'd ever seen.
Yeah, so he'll always have a special place in my heart because it was cool to get that opportunity, and such a nice guy, very very nice guy. So very.
We got to have you to meet him though.
Sometime.
Yeah. Throw out the first pitch.
Oh, there you go. But and I'll mention about his glove. He uses a 36-inch.
That's
glove.
A huge glove.
It's massive. Yeah. When I got it in the mail, I looked at it and I was just blown away. I was like, "This is bigger than any glove I've ever seen."
That's huge.
Have massive hands, long fingers.
And his so I looked at the model on it, and it's the Travis d'Arnaud model. I was like, "That's weird. You can't buy that in stores. You have to have it custom ordered." And so Travis d'Arnaud, he had his own model that was 36, and so Jose wanted to use that model.
Okay.
So it's just absolutely massive. And it's also interesting because then Tyler Stevenson this last year, he went to Wilson to ask for a 35. So the catcher's mitts are getting bigger.
They're getting bigger.
But a lot of people might not know how big of a glove that he's using right now. But we're kind of trending in that position. So anyway, I'll wrap it. I'll wrap it there. But some cool glove insight about guys like that.
Yeah, but I just wonder what size Johnny Bench's mitt was. I mean, because he has massive hands too.
Hands, man.
That's interesting.
Yes.
But I guess they're using the bigger mitts now so they can frame the ball.
That's a lot of what it is, and you're seeing guys move their fingers over, so you're doing 2 in the pinky. So rather than catching like this, it's almost more like this. And I think part of it is your turn. You're keeping the thumb down, kind of scooping up through it.
Yes.
And guys throw hard now, harder than they used to.
Yes. Why you look at me? When Adam Dunn said that to me. He said the guys throw harder now. I said, well, they may be bigger, smarter, but they're not. I mean, they may be bigger, taller, and faster, but they weren't smarter. that was my response to that. I said, you big donkey.
Okay, who you got, George?
Well,
who you got left?
What is left? Let me see. I had to go down to Japan, So this guy, he's in the Hall of Fame now. Ted Simmons, a switch hitter. He wasn't known for a lot as far as his defense, but he did a good job back there. And he's more known for his offense. And I always love watching him play, except when we're playing against him. But he was always consistent at the plate, and he was in the shadows of a Johnny Bench. But I always loved him. That he did because he knew the pitching. One of the main things is being a leader out there and taking care of those pitchers. You go out there and talk to them and calm them down. So Ted Simmons is probably the top on my list, other than the 10 guys you guys are already taken. The other guy, no one, with Montreal, Barry Foote. Most of those guys are tall, big, and so it's intimidating when you're trying to score coming home. You don't want to run into those guys. Yeah. So Barry Foote with the bat, he wasn't once he more defensive. And once again, he could cover a lot of ground. But I feel that with a catcher being able to control the ball game, and Barry Foote did a good job there. Had a few injuries that set him back. The other guy, he's like a brick wall. Lance Parrish.
There you go. That's a name
That's
I haven't
a
heard.
Yeah, that's the name from the past with Detroit.
Yes.
But I think this guy not every day, but 3 times a day, he's hitting the weights. Because this guy, nobody wanted to score when he's behind the plate. The guy who's running wanted to call timeout because you don't want to have a collision up there. But Lance Parrish was he was a great defensive catcher, and he hits for some power also. But you don't want to get in a fight with the Detroit Tigers. If you do, stay away from Lance. If you want to stay healthy. The other guy, I always looked at the Dodger catchers as dirty because, because Socha, one of them, but this other guy, Steve Yeager. This guy,
I remember
that's right.
but
yes,
you're talking about a cannon of an arm, and later on he started to add more with the offense. But he was tough behind the plate, and my game plan when I go up to the plate, I always know the name of the umpire, know the name of the catcher, so I would speak to them when I go up there, so they felt, well, it's not going to bother me if they say anything to me. So I want to start the conversation. And one game, though, I went up there, I'm really focused. And then I heard Yeager said, okay, let's get a double play. So now he planted the seed in my mind that I ended up hitting the ground ball. I said, next time I got to go up there and just say, hey, how you guys doing? How's it doing? And I told Yeager one time I got this, saying that the pitch that's going to be thrown, I have it. I hit a home run. He said, well, the next time we got to hit you in the head. I told you I got it. I'm just being honest with you. But this is going back before Ethan was born. But Jerry Grody with the Mets, he had a Tom Seaver, had a Nolan Ryan. This one guy, asked him later on. I said, "What would you do? I mean, did you really believe in? If you believed in yourself as much as everybody else, when they talked about Jerry Koosman, this guy could have been a Hall of Famer. I'd rather face a Tom Seaver than a Koosman." He had one of the toughest curveballs to pick up, but he didn't. I don't know. A lot of guys don't have the confidence they can do it, but coming into New York, I mean, we always flew in the day of. You don't get a chance to get a rest. Now you're going to face a Tom Seaver. You're going to face a Nolan Ryan or Koosman. You could be going 0 for 9, 0 for 10. So you want to try to get that walk in there. But Jerry Koosman, back to Jerry Grody, he was great defensively. And talking about hard nose, that's another team you don't want to get in a fight with because he's like Pedro Boban on our team. Those guys look for fights. They want to knock somebody out. And the other one going with the Cubs, Randy Hundley. He was great behind the plate. He had Ferguson Jenkins was there. I think Holtzman there. So, but being in Wrigley Field, you got to help your pitchers out. And he was pretty good back there, but he's always talking. But he wants to go out there and instigate and get into your mind, instigate. But that's another guy you don't want to slide head first in the home plate if you want your fingers left or if you don't want to get kicked in the head. But back in those days, those guys don't care. They're gonna step on you. They're gonna kick you, elbow you. It's like playing football, going into the catcher. But those guys are the ones that stood out for me. But back to when we're talking about Molina, I really love watching him because I know he controlled the game. He really stood out, and
he did.
And he commanded. This is what we're gonna do, and being that leader. So those my 5.
All right, since I'm last today.
Who do you have left?
Have anybody?
I've
got
got Pudge is still there. Johnny Bench is still there. Yachty is still there. But you guys did not, and Tony Pena, you guys talked about. Benito Santiago.
Oh, there's a good one.
Yes, man.
Yeah.
Yes, Benito Santiago. I liked him, man. He had a cannon from one knee, spread out.
Yeah, that's what the good about Pena. They thought he was down on one knee, was not going to make that good throw.
Yes, he had a very flexible. and he won several. He was a 4-time Silver Slugger Award winner. A lot of people don't know that. He won 3 Gold Gloves. Another person, Manny Sanguin, who was before Tony Pena.
Yeah, I had never heard that name until you just brought it up. But
Yeah, Manny Sanguin, man. Dave Parker, the We Are Family. He was part of all of that.
Why'd you ring that up? That's like PTSD. When they were beating us in the 79.
I know. Well, I used to hate that.
I can see
The
it
playoffs.
now.
Oh, man, I used to be mad.
that's funny.
Yeah, but Manny Sanguin. So after him was Tony Pena. And then you were talking about JT Realmuto with his arm. Benito Santiago had a cannon also from that position. I mean, his ball coming out. And did you know his son played for University of Tennessee, Benito Santiago Jr.
Did not
He
know
just
that.
graduated a couple years ago. Yeah, he's good. He's an outfielder. I don't think he was a catcher.
Surprise.
Yeah, I know. Bob Boone.
Oh, yeah, Bob Boone.
Bob Boone.
7 Gold Gloves, man. The Phillies, man. He command again. Another guy that command.
Because he started with
And,
the Angels, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or did he go to the Angels after the Phillies, or did he go from the Phillies to the Angels?
I'll look it
we'll
up.
Have to,
Ethan's
we
gotta
have to look it up.
for-
Ethan will look it up
Yeah.
for us. Yeah.
So I like Bob
Bob
Boone,
Boone.
man. He was consistent.
Well, that was that weird stat that I looked up the other week about Bob
Oh,
Boone
yeah.
threw out Ricky Henderson more than any other catcher.
Right.
Just seemed to have his number.
Yeah, he was
Yes.
a Philly from 72 to 81, and then an Angel from 82
I
to
was
88,
right. I thought it was after.
and then a Royal for his
in a
last 2
Royal.
years.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I remember he was with the Royals.
Mm-hmm.
And then Pudge, Johnny Bench, Yachty, those guys, man, that solidified catching for me. So that's it.
Had a couple of honorable mentions, guys like Mike Matheny.
Yes.
you know,
Yeah,
I,
Mike Matheny, I liked him.
Read Mike Matheny's book. I highly recommend anybody who's coaching
agree.
baseball to read Mike Matheny's book. It was a I don't remember off the top
The
of my head.
Manifesto.
That's what it was, yeah. And what a great book.
Yes.
Another one that stood out, had his career somewhat, not shortened, but the quality it was shortened with Ray Fosse.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he was with
Yes.
Cleveland. He was the next Johnny Bench, so to
Yes.
speak. And of course, that collision with him at home plate with Pete Rose.
Oh, man.
Well,
Just
then,
derailed his career after that.
Yeah, it did.
and a guy I never knew much about until I went back and started watching a lot of the highlights of you guys in the 70s on YouTube, that shows up a lot because of the World Series was Thurman Munson. And
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know much about Thurman Munson
Yeah.
because he was an American League guy, but he
Canton.
seems to
Ohio.
show up quite a bit there.
Yeah, I
especially
didn't
in
mention him
76.
mainly because he didn't have a great throwing arm, but he got rid of the ball quickly. Is that if I have at the one hop or whatever, he's getting rid of the ball. But of course, he was known for his bat also.
Yeah.
But the other part is the leadership. Not only on the field but off the field. I mean, in the clubhouse. Having somebody to control the clubhouse.
It was interesting when we were looking at sort of Johnny Bench, his post catching years. The guys who would fill in, or guys who came in after him,
Plummer.
guys you don't hear about
Right.
a lot. Was it Wagner?
We're off the bench.
Yeah,
But Plummer,
don't
Bill
remember his
Plummer
name. This
was
guy
there
started with a W.
mostly. The other guys, I don't recall their names, but I know there's a few guys that were there later on.
Bill Plummer couldn't hit, though, couldn't he?
well, he
had a
didn't.
weak bat.
It wasn't known to
Okay,
be,
yeah.
but he's
Talking
a
about Don Werner?
Warner.
Warner.
that's what it
Yeah,
was,
yeah. But Plummer was just known for his defense.
Yes.
and then
Yeah.
I would say that he was a Sunday catcher because you find Johnny Bench or you find Joe Morgan, they didn't play on Sunday.
I see.
So that's when Doug Flynn would play or Bill Plummer. So they knew their role. That was
Right.
good about Sparky. He let everybody know their role, so you prepared
good.
for it.
Yeah, and then I always felt badly for the guys who came after Bench in, like guys I remember like Joe Oliver
Right.
and
Yeah.
Bo Diaz, and some of these guys who were just good platoon catchers. They were good guys, but
But you're not going to draft anyone as a catcher with Johnny there.
That's what I'm saying.
So
Right.
you're gonna lose out on that. So you end up getting, you're not gonna get a top catcher, but getting someone like you say, being platoon or just adequate back there.
Now, the one thing I will throw a plug in for this, Devin Mesoraco.
Oh yeah,
I'll get it out.
Devin.
Devin.
He Mesoraco.
Mesoraco.
Devin Mesoraco.
Mesoraco, that's right.
Mesoraco.
Too many S's in there. I don't know why I couldn't say it. Talk about a guy who had some interesting things go on in his career. Ethan participated in a podcast. If anybody hasn't heard it, it's called The Hall of Pretty Good, and it was hosted by a guy mostly on YouTube, I think. And he had Ethan on as a guest to talk about Mesoraco, and that was a really interesting episode. If you're interested in picking that up, go check out The Hall of Pretty Good. It was a really interesting conversation. That
And I'll shout him out. He does a cool thing where he highlights guys that didn't have crazy numbers, but still were in the major leagues. And it's kind of like, well, you can say they weren't good, but were you in the major leagues kind of thing? He likes to highlight those guys. And since we're on the topic, I'll give a quick shout out to Ryan Hannigan, Devin Mesoraco,
right.
Devin Mesoraco,
Ryan.
and Tucker Barnhart. Those were the
I know Tucker personally.
yeah. Those were the three Cincinnati guys,
liked
the three main Cincinnati guys growing up. So shout out to them for giving me good guys to look up to.
I like Tucker because he was a defensive beast.
But
He can hit,
thing about Ryan Hannigan was that he wore the hockey style helmet, and I thought the 2-piece was cooler. So I just didn't think Ryan Hannigan was cool. That was the problem. I have a lot of respect for him and what he did for different teams. But when Devin Mesoraco came in, I was like, all right, we got somebody different in here. And then he had that huge 2013 season,
right,
and was really going to become something. And just injuries just shut him down. Another guy that went from Cincinnati to New York, and had a quick stint with the Mets before hanging it up. And now he's coaching at University of Pittsburgh. So I watched a couple of interviews with him and talk about just a strategic mind. I would not be surprised if we see him managing in the majors before too long.
Well, you find that the best, I feel the best managers are the ones who are catchers because they've been on both sides of the plate. So they know offense and they know defense. And when, like Joe Torre, he was managing, I felt he was a good manager because he knew he could talk to the guys about offense, talk to the guys about defense, or talk to the pitchers because he's been in that situation.
Tucker Barnhart. I give you a little bit of history. Been knowing Tucker probably when he was 12 years old. Our Westchester Sluggers travel team played against their
Indiana Bulls
Bulls team probably about 4 or 5 times. And he was a shortstop coming up, man.
Interesting.
Yes, he was a shortstop. He was a good shortstop, man. To me, he was probably one of the best shortstops in the Midwest. Truthfully,
he was a switch hitter then?
Yep, he was a switch hitter. He had 2 home runs against us. We still beat him, though. Yes, he hit. And I like Tucker. I really do. And just knowing him from all these years. And then he transitioned, I believe we played them in, sophomore year, and he was playing catcher at that time. And so that's when he made that transition to catcher, and then from there. And I believe he was going to Georgia Tech. And then he signed with Georgia Tech, and then I guess the Reds offered him that slot money.
More.
They
didn't have the Neil money yet.
Yes. So, but I've been knowing him for a long time since, like I said, since he was 12 years old. So we played him out 4 or 5 times through those years, and it was some good competition. They only beat us one time. We lost them in Indianapolis at that time, and they beat us pretty good.
I just wish that the guy like Tucker, he still had some years. He could go out there and help a ball club.
Yes.
But it's just, I just wish I could get with him and work with him on his approach at the plate. They went from having him a switch hitter to just strictly left-handed. But even there, getting a opportunity to play. But when we had come back to the Reds, I think a couple of years ago, I was hoping that I would see him, that would bring him up and get a chance to work with him. I don't know if they trust what I could do, but I said, here are the stats. I hit a little bit, but like Ethan was saying earlier about someone said, okay, they would ask me, you didn't do this or that. I said, let me see your baseball card. You didn't play.
Exactly. Experience.
But he's a guy that, you know, he's struggled offensively, but and a lot of people are gonna solo that out and define his career by that.
Yes.
But he's a great defensive catcher.
is.
He's
Yes.
he's got 2 more Gold Gloves than any of you do. You know,
Thank you.
but a guy who's still floating around, and I would not be. I would love to talk to some of his teammates, especially maybe some pitching staffs that he's handled, because I guarantee that there is far more than meets the eye with him. A guy who's probably leading and providing a lot of clubhouse value that you're not going to see on the stat card. So there's a reason that he still caught 31 games for the Diamondbacks last year. You know what I mean? I mean, people are still need him. He's still providing value, and I don't think that should be overlooked.
Well, he was one of the first pro ball players that you ever met in person.
Yeah, there used to be a jersey framing shop over here in Village Green, and I was down here after school taking a nap one day, and he woke me up. He said, "Hey, Tucker Barnhart's at the shop down the street." And I'm like,
okay.
What? And so he takes me down there, and there's a picture of me in 7th grade, probably almost as tall as Tucker Barnhart. I'm like, but I'm like half awake, and picture with Tucker Barnhart. But it was cool to meet him.
He stood there and talked to us for a while. He was a very nice guy.
But a great guy to kind of model the game after, and somebody I think gets overlooked too often.
Great guy, great family.
Yes, it is. Great family.
So you finished the season last year, exhausted from all the travel and the tournaments, and you tossed your gear in a bag where it's been sitting all winter. Now you're ready for another year, but your favorite glove that fits just right is an error waiting to happen. The leather's dry, the laces are brittle, and this year you're on a new team with new colors, and it sure would be cool if it matched. Well, wouldn't it be great if you had a glove guy who could help you out with that? You do. His name is Ethan, and he owns Glovehound Baseball Glove Repair Shop in Fairfield, Ohio. Just contact him at glovehound.com and upload pictures of your glove. He'll give you a call back to talk it over, and then you can send it in for a repair, relace, recondition, whatever you need. If you're in the area, you can even just stop by the shop. That way you don't have to bother with shipping, and a lot of times he can even fix it while you wait. Rawlings, Wilson, Mizuno, All-Star, Nakona, he's seen them all, and he's helped players at all levels, from beginners to pros. Last year he worked on a glove that Jose Trevino used in the World Series, and he can help you too. You can find Glovehound on Google, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at glovehound.com. You're only going to get busier, so reach out today and give your glove the love it deserves at Glovehound. In the main thing segment today, we're going to talk about a couple of different things. We're going to talk about first, what traits or skills make a successful catcher? What are the things about a person that make you go, that guy would make a great catcher?
Mm-hmm. Number one, I say when I go in and look at catching, it's who can block the ball, because keeping the runners from advancing, eliminate a lot of pass ball, wild pitches, and not being afraid to block the ball.
Exactly.
And when you have a guy like that, I'm not as concerned about his bat or his arm, but being able to keep the guys from advancing to another base. So I work with them hitting fungals, ground balls to them, and to block the ball. But when I start seeing him flinching a little bit, I said, no, that's not a position for you. You got to show that courage back there.
Yes, you sure do.
Blocking, eliminating a lot of wild pitches and pass balls.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I used to do with our MD&I team, with Jimmy and a lot of our other catchers, we used to keep a stat in bullpens. So how many that you let go or miss balls or anything like that. And so we used to have a stat, and then after the bullpens, whatever they missed, they had their run, run sprints. But guess what though? What we
catching
did,
gear on?
Yes. But what we did was, since we had 3 catchers, if the one catcher had to run, the other catchers just said, hey, we'll run with you, because that could happen to us too. Sure. So when I used to go to games, I used to always ask the umpire after the games, like, how did my catchers do? Said, great, because one of the goals is, especially in the youth league, keep the balls off the umpire
Off
so
the
you
umpire,
can
yeah.
get those calls.
Right, yeah.
Because guys get hit in the shoulder, man.
right.
Kids miss balls, get hit in the shoulder, hit in the leg, and stuff like that. And then you don't get certain calls, man. Because
Yeah, for sure.
they be mad at that
umpire's
catcher,
scared.
man.
He's scared back there.
So those are things that I used to teach our catchers to do, man, is, hey, as long as you're trying to protect him too, and also you're trying to receive strikes. So you got a couple things going on back there. So
I remember that catching saved baseball for me. When I first started playing baseball when I was just a little kid, you end up, they move you around, and I was playing outfield and this and that and in different places. And my brain always going 100 miles an hour. I always had this sort of, I don't know, today they'd call it ADD, but back then it was just lots of things going on in my head. Right. And, I would get distracted very, very easily if there wasn't something going on all the time. And I remember my dad said, "Have you thought about being a catcher?" And he said, "You get to be the coach on the field." That was what he said. And I thought, wait a minute. Now that sounds interesting to me.
Right.
You get to touch the ball all the time, and you get to be intricately involved in what's going on. And then I said, "Yeah, okay, that's for me." And he said, he said, "You got to understand the game. You got to understand where everybody's doing. You got to give direction. You got to speak to your teammates. You got to, you got to take command out there if that's what you're going to do. You can't go out there and just, not do the job, because then you're actually hurting your team."
yes.
And so then I really dug into what it meant to be the sort of the commander or the coach on the field, and really got into trying figuring out what it was about my pitchers and how I could help keep their heads on straight, and how I could help them figure out how to get this guy out or get that guy out, or how, making sure everybody knew how many outs there were, making sure they knew what the pitch count was, making sure we knew what this guy did last time, making sure, and so all of that really brought baseball alive for me, and it saved it.
That's what you needed to be
And-
right involved.
Yeah. So I look at young kids now and I say, man, you got a kid who's a thinker. You got a kid who is a natural leader. He's got confidence in himself. He can take control of a situation, but he's not the kind of guy that everybody dislikes. He's the kind of guy that it sort of inspires loyalty. He's the person who works hard, and it emulates that work ethic that everybody, because you can't be a catcher and let everybody else outwork you.
Right.
That's just not the way that works.
Being passive.
Yeah.
Can't be passive.
Yeah, you got to be the person who goes out there and takes it by the horns and makes it happen.
But I think it's funny that you bring up Jimmy Nugent and then you bring up not being able to focus because
Jimmy was like that.
He
at
was
first,
like
man.
that. So
trust me,
so
I've been through a lot of practices.
I played with Jimmy in Little League, and when we first started playing, he was the backup catcher to me because I was older.
Yes.
And so he played a lot of third base.
Yes.
And that kid just had so much energy.
He did.
And it was impossible to keep him focused on anything.
Yes.
And then we went our separate ways, and he became a way better catcher than I ever did. But it was funny because he struggled in the field because he needed to be behind that plate in order to keep him focused. But that was the same thing with me. I tried to play third or first base in coach pitch because I wanted something to happen. So catching was really kind of
More action.
Yeah. It was the thing for me in Little League because I would I couldn't stay focused anywhere else.
The other thing I look for in a catcher is somebody who can stay calm when the pressure is on.
Yes.
Like somebody has got to keep their head on straight. When you're getting run on, especially in those youth games where, it's constant, it's just like 500 steals a game and everybody's, just running all over you. Somebody's got to be able to say, okay, hold on. Let's get our heads back on and stop this momentum, stop the chaos, get everything back together. And, your pitcher's coming undone because he's trying to figure out what to do out there, and the coach is getting frustrated, and, somebody's got to be able to keep it together. And if you got a guy, and Ethan was this kid, that's one of the things why I encouraged him to be a catcher early on, because he was the kind of kid who just didn't lose his mind over stuff. He was always able to stay calm and keep his teammates calm. And if you can do that, I think you're doing everybody.
Well, he's
the
catcher's, like say, being a coach on the field and also being a leader.
Yes.
I remember with Sparky and John McNamara, some of the other managers, they would come out and ask Johnny, how's he throwing? But Johnny may shake his head, get somebody loose. Or he may say, I haven't caught one yet. No, but like I say, the catcher has an idea if the ball's moving or not moving, but having a guy that's going to be honest and let you know, okay, because I remember we went to, I think, Louisville, and my pitcher, he was a relief pitcher, maybe 2 or 3 innings in the beginning, but he was throwing a pitch that I was asking the catcher, I said, what is he throwing? And he like say, never mind or something like that. Don't be concerned about it. But because he didn't want to tell me what it was because the opposition would know. Or they said, don't worry about it. So then he called another pitch and the guy got a hit. I said, keep calling that same pitch. I said, why didn't you throw that pitch again? Well, the catcher called. I said, no, keep throwing the same pitch. But now they were on the same page. And each inning, the other guys would say, is he still in? I said, yeah, he's throwing a one-hitter. He's still in the game. But that catcher has an idea how the breaking ball is breaking or how the fastball is moving.
Yes.
So it gets you can get a lot of information. It's like a computer out there, a lot of information to let you know, take him out or warm up somebody else or keep him in the game.
Well, and the ability to talk to all the batters, that I love that. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love getting in their heads and messing with them. And when the movie Bull Durham came out, I remember I was watching the girl I was dating at the time. We were watching it, and she was laughing at Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
I said, "That's the way it is."
Right.
I'm like, good catchers will do that. They're just constantly in your head all the time.
Talking.
But that's the one thing with Pete. He didn't. Number one, he didn't like to face a new guy as a pitcher. He didn't like the catcher talking to him. Okay. So he's telling the umpire, tell him to be quiet. And the umpire's like, I can't control that. But they knew that he didn't like that. So he's, hey, how you doing today? Are you still in the top 10 in hitting? Oh, nice shoes. You got some new shoes.
That's funny.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. I taught Ethan to do that. I was like, when you get on base, man, just start talking to them. Just ask them about anything. Ask them what they had for breakfast, whatever. Just get them, and they'll look at you like, why are you talking to me? And they get all freaked out about it.
Well, Will Clark, I mean, first baseman, but I really dislike being at first base because he said, hey, I read about you, you're good. I was like, I want to say, I don't care. But I didn't want to start a conversation with him. He's talking about everything. And I said, I got to get out of here. I got to get to second base.
Yeah, I think, I will always contend that the team that talks more stands a way better chance of winning that game. Because if you are talking, especially if you're talking to each other out on the field, my goodness, that means you're relaxed, you're confident.
And you're
enjoying, you're communicating, your interaction.
Yes, you can think 2 and 3 steps ahead before the play happens,
But Manny St. Guin was the guy who talked all the time.
Did he?
And the other part is that don't have him to eat too much before the game.
Oh.
Because, you want to get out of there real quick. You want to wear a nose guard or something. And it's a hot day, too.
Ooh,
and then now the umpire's getting sick. And the umpire's, like dizzy. He's like, I don't know if I can last 2.5 hours out here. But he does it on purpose, eat some old chicken or old steak. And like, okay.
Well, I knew a kid who used to wrestle for our school, and before every match, he would eat sardines. Oh. It was the sardines and mustard sauce, and he's pounding sardines and mustard sauce, and he'd go out there,
yeah, or garlic right in the umpire's face. No.
So yeah, I mean, those are the things I look for when I'm looking for a catcher. Somebody who can, again, going back to what we said the other week, inspire.
Yeah.
Power is no match for inspiration. If you're the kind of guy who can work hard and inspire your teammates to want to come around you and listen to what you have to say, then you're going to be a good catcher.
And the way that you do that is by communication, like you're just talking about with Manny St. Guin. You can't be quiet back there. Because you see the whole field, and so you're responsible for a lot of times for calling different steal coverages or calling bunt coverages,
coverages.
or something I
Yes.
didn't realize until I got older was you're responsible for lining up cutoff throws
Yes,
coming to home
exactly.
plate.
Yes.
That was something I
Or
didn't
cut
learn.
and hold.
I didn't learn.
Hey, don't stop throwing the ball around, man. Hold it.
Oh my gosh. Especially
Yes.
especially at the younger level.
Thank you.
But yeah, that's something I didn't learn until high school is lining up throws from right field through first base to home, or from left field through third base to home. You can't be quiet out there because those guys can't see what's going on behind them,
Right.
and they're in the middle of a play. They need you to help direct them and guide them.
But the trust that it instills in a pitcher, he's not
Yes.
reluctant to throw a breaking ball when a man on third base
Well,
because
yeah.
he trusts that
'Cause
the
he
catcher's
trusts
going to keep the ball out in front.
Yeah.
And the other one, when nobody's on base, you don't see many catchers do that, but they're running from home plate and backing up first base.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
And
exactly.
I said, "Oh yeah, that's the guy I want."
Yes.
because he's showing everybody else you need to hustle.
Still the hustle.
Mm-hmm.
There's all the time you need to hustle on the field.
That was one thing I saw in a thing I watched about Carlton Fisk. Was that there was no excuse not to hustle, and if you didn't hustle,
Right.
he was in your face. I mean, there's
Right.
the famous interaction that he had with Deion Sanders, where Deion was
When he
drawing
put that
dollar
dollar,
signs,
yeah.
and then he was just not hustling. He'd hit a pop up, and he just wouldn't hustle. And,
Yeah.
and Fisk is like in his face, going, "There's a right and a wrong way to play this game, and you're playing it wrong."
Yeah.
And kind of saw himself as the defender of classic baseball.
Right.
Yeah, and but a guy who was going to go out there and give it 110%.
But he's a big guy. I think he was like
6'3",
6'3".
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he was an imposing figure, but at the same time,
like that.
he did not make exceptions. Like you play hard. That's
Yeah.
the thing, and that's kind of the same thing I grew up in. My, Dad would have a lot of. You could have grace for a lot of things. You tried hard, you made mistakes. We'll talk about it. We'll work on it. But if you're not hustling, there is
Yeah.
no excuse for that.
But with Johnny Bench the same way. He may not just get in your face, but he would say quietly, "Yeah, we don't do that around here." And when I had come from the Giants to the Reds, with the Giants, it was okay. You take your hat and put it in your pocket. I said, "No, we don't do it around here." So okay. But they let you know right away. So you have leaders out there on the field so that once you don't do what they want you to do or should be doing, they'll let you know, but in a quiet way. Like in Pete's case, Pete Rose is there. Hey man, you got to hustle. Got to get to the bag. You need that run. We need you to be on base. Come on. It's only you're young. Should be able to play every day. Let's go.
Tell me a little bit about what you played with some amazing catchers. So what does having a really great catcher on your team, how does that make your job easier as a left fielder?
Well, it makes it easier as a team because you want to be strong up the middle. You know that you're behind the plate, short, second, center field. And that's why Bob Howsam had made that trade with the Astros back in '72 when he got Joe Morgan here. Because we're going from grass to AstroTurf. We needed faster guys up the middle. But sometimes you don't really notice you didn't notice how good Johnny was because it wasn't that he would flamboyant or anything, but he just got the job done.
Of the weaknesses.
Right, but he cut down the running game so that knowing that if a guy gets a base hit, now he's going from first to maybe third, but you have a chance to throw him out, but he's not going to get a big lead at first base. So having a guy like Johnny behind the plate, it changes the game, and it somewhat deterred the opposition taking that extra base or trying to steal or taking a bigger lead off. And the command that he has behind the plate, because knowing that, okay, if it's Don Gullett out there, he's going to call for his best pitch in certain situations. So I knowing that Gullett going to throw it a fastball, and so the guy's not going to be as quick as with the bat, so I'm going to play more left center compared to down the line. So it changes the way you play the defense. And we had great communication with Griffey, Geronimo, myself, because I tell Chief, you got everything I got the foul line. You got everything else right there. Mm-hmm. So we had that. But Chief would said, I would have had 8 more years if I didn't have to cover George Foster's territory. No, but the defense would line up perfectly. Yeah. But it's according to we knowing that Johnny's going to call a certain pitch. They're not going to try to fool somebody. Right. Throw a change up and you playing right towards right field. So, but he had a great command and the trust that he had. And it's just the impact that he had on the behind the plate that really changed the attitude of everybody. And like I say, we're in the right place at the right time. Pete doesn't have to play on the line. He played more toward shortstop. In the AstroTurf, Davey's playing up the middle. So it improves everything.
So let me ask you this. When you're talking about having that communication with the catcher all the way from the outfield, how good of an idea did you have of what pitch was coming? Were you getting some sort of sign, or you were learning the tendencies?
No, we would move with the center fielder because the center fielder can see where if he's sitting outside, if it's sitting inside.
Okay.
So, and especially we say with 2 strikes, we're always going to move towards with the opposite field. Mm-hmm. But watching Geronimo, watch him move because he's seeing what Johnny's setting up. Mm. And then, of course, you're watching the shortstop, but everybody's got to move according to what pitch is going to be thrown. Mm. So that and he was consistent in doing that. And so it was like a dance or choreography because everybody moved in the same rhythm, the same time. There's nobody. I'm not playing down the line when I should be playing left center, things as such. But like I say, Geronimo I would read everything off of him. And he's reading it off Johnny. Mm.
So then what's the difference between playing with Johnny behind the plate and then playing with somebody like Gary Carter behind the plate?
It's about the same because both of those guys knew the game. Mm. They knew how to call the game. And they're going to say, in a sense, Gary, he'll get in your face and let you know that, hey, you can't be playing over there. Or he actually go out and wave you over.
Would he really?
Yeah, wave you over. I mean, you're standing there, and they said, "Oh, get your attention. Let's go. We're gonna." And then sometimes it messes up the batter because he say, "Okay, I want you to play more right center." So the guy thinks you're gonna throw him away, but he's gonna bust him inside.
Yeah.
So, but he took command and letting, like Ethan was saying, that letting them know what. Okay, we're going to. What's the play? It's gonna be the will play or who's the cutoff.
Right.
Things that. You need somebody who's going to be able to let the infielders know what they should be doing. And like the first baseman, he may give a sign that we're going to try to pick him off because he's getting a big lead. And Johnny did that a lot. Gary Carter the same way, pick him off. Yeager the same way. Those guys had strong arms. The guy at second base, taking a lead too long for a lead, he tried to pick that guy off. But they have a sign because those guys are always doing something. It's nonstop.
That's cool. What are you guys from a catcher's perspective or from a coach's perspective? What are some of the specific things that you do to develop a catcher? So, like, how do you work with a catcher to get him to learn to call a game properly?
Trial and error. Trial and error, man, and let them fail. And I think in this era, too many people trying to control. Mm-hmm. I think that coming up, I think everybody caught. I even caught before, but it allows you to learn the game. Mm. And so from high school to semi-pro baseball to coaching and being with coaches that understand the game made it easy for me to teach the game or us teach the game to our players.
I caught one pitch. The guy hit me in the back of the head with the bat because I was too close to the plate. Time out.
Oh, he tried to throw it.
No, I've got too close. I'm trying to reach to catch the ball, and then the guy's swinging at it, and the batter hit me in the back of the head. So that right away, hey, you should be out in left field.
I think also if you can get access to guys who were catchers at higher levels. I know you've talked a lot about learning from Coach Peregrine, who was a catcher at a higher level.
Yeah, and that's something that we've talked on I think probably in every episode is finding a guy who's been there, done that. And Coach Billy Paragon, he caught in the minor leagues. I don't know that he ever
Phillies,
Braves mostly.
Yeah, Braves.
I don't know that he ever
Braves.
made it to the majors, but he had that old school mentality,
he did.
that hard work. I mean, one of the hardest working humans I've ever met in my life.
He is.
But just the insight that he would bring, like we talked before the show about learning how to read pop-ups as a catcher and turning your back to the infield so the ball comes into you. I didn't know. I had never heard that until he taught me that in high school. So being able to seek out a guy who's been there, done that, just so many little nuggets that are second nature to those guys that us younger guys who, you have to learn it somewhere. Yeah, so just spending time with them, you can absorb so much.
I think also what's missing is the patience to be able to teach catching. And the baseball IQ that it takes to understand catching, understand what's going on out in the field and things like that. Some kids might already come with the knowledge. Some kids might not. So those kids that doesn't have knowledge or a tough grit or whatever, or to understand command, you really got to teach them the game per se, how to read pitchers or how to drop and block and how to command. It's so much involved with catching that you've got to take the time to develop these type players, man. And that's what's missing. I see it in the academy, and I just sit back and they don't spend enough time with teaching the game, teaching the baseball IQ of baseball, man.
Having different stations to work with.
Yes.
They don't realize the importance of working with. But for me as a coach, my mission is to help these guys to develop.
Yes,
and
sir.
So we're talking about calling the game itself. You got to read the situation.
Yes, you got to read.
A guy's throwing a fastball and the batter's late on it. You don't want to throw him a changeup.
Right.
So now you speed up his bat. But if a guy's pulling that fastball, then now you have a chance.
Yes.
But it just not reading in that instance. But like I say, help them to develop as a catcher. And you're saying that, okay, Greg's dad was saying that if you want to be a catcher, these are the responsibilities. Exactly. Not just get behind the plate. Yeah. And I call it, don't be behind the plate. You should be catching, but you're fetching. I had taken one of my catchers out of the game, and because he hadn't caught a ball. And so now the pitcher's not confident in throwing anything up there. And so I took him out, and the mom was saying, "What are you doing?" I said, "Do you see what I see?" So it's like I didn't want to embarrass the kid, put him in a situation he's going to be successful in, but getting someone back there that's able to catch the ball.
Well, I want to go back to what you were saying, Rick, about a lot of coaches not having patience with the catchers, and I've got a little bit of personal testimony with that, and that I caught, pretty much from the first year of kid pitch up until high school, tried out my freshman year. And for whatever reason, we had an abundance of catchers, which is rare. But in our class, we had, probably 6 or 7. We had a lot of catchers. And they were looking for who was most ready at the time, and I was not. I was still on the heavier side. I wasn't very mobile. Had a good arm. Decent bat. I just wasn't mobile, and I know that. So I was a PO that year, and then I started hitting. They let me hit. Then I was a PO DH, which made me just useless in the field with a glove. So then, but I had a coach tell me, you're not a catcher anymore. And so in my head, my identity switched. I was like, oh, I guess I'm not a catcher anymore. Well, the next summer, I'm thinking, oh, well, I'm not going to have a shot to play catcher at school, so I might as well just be done with that. So I went to go play third base, and I was not the best third baseman because I hadn't had the experience, but I was a decent pitcher because I had a good arm. And then I came back to school and played third base my sophomore year because I knew I wasn't going to have a shot at catcher. And we were starting to call up freshmen to catch JV because then we were short on catchers. So then the next year I go out, and I'm like, I'm done catching. This is summer. And I'm like, it's not going to happen, whatever. I put my gear up in the garage. I wasn't bringing it with me to games, that kind of thing.
Put on eBay.
Yeah. And so, but then I had a dad come to me. He was like, because we were struggling at catcher on that summer team. And he was like, please get behind that plate. I know it's been a while, but can you help us out? I was like, okay, fine. And we needed the depth. So I went into catching. I went to go drop and block for the first time. And it was way easier. It was because I was 25 pounds lighter. And so it was just it was a matter of time for me to hit that kind of growth spurt in high school. And then catching was a lot easier.
Yes.
It was, and it became fun again. But then going back to school, I knew they had told me I wasn't a catcher. So I think by that time I had gotten rid of the gear. And then they said, "Hey, Duncan, you interested in catching again?" And I was like, "What?" and then COVID happened, and the rest is history. But I want to just, I was passionate at catching, and I had some coaches turn me away from it. And I wish I had kept that in the back pocket and continued to work on it, because looking back, that's where I belonged. And baseball became less fun when I quit catching. So I just want to encourage players and parents of players, don't let a coach discourage it or define you as a player. If you're passionate about something, continue to work on it. And even if it's not the current opportunity, keep it in the back pocket in case it comes up later, because more often than not, it will.
Keep working on it.
I could have brought that out later in my career had I continued to work on it.
Well, because it's so easy for kids to think that what's going on right now is permanent.
Right.
Yes,
And
100%.
you know, as a parent, you guys know this. As a parent, you find yourself constantly telling your child, "Look, just this is temporary. You'll grow. You'll change.
Yes.
You get this is this much of your life right here going on right now. So just hang in there. Just realize it's temporary, and that's the thing. But going back to something that Rick had said earlier that I think plays into what you're talking about. Okay, I have a theory, and I'll try not to soapbox too much on this, but the reason why we don't have patience enough to develop catchers is mostly because we don't play baseball in leagues. We play in tournaments.
Yes.
And baseball is not meant to be a tournament-only sport. It's just not. If everything you play is a tournament, then every game is the playoffs.
Right.
And your A guys have to be on the field all the time. You can't platoon. You can't take time. You can't learn by trial and error. You can't allow them to fail, because if they do, then you lose, then you didn't win, then you go. Everything is pressure cooker all the dumb time. And when you get to that point, it takes all the fun out of baseball, and nobody gets what they need.
There's no freedom to mess up.
Right. So this is why when I started MD&I, I did a lot of round robins. Yeah, I'll call up, hey, 3 or 4, just a practice game. To get guys reps, put them in different positions, let them fail. So what, man? Go. That's how you're gonna learn the game. Because we can't count on kids today going outside and playing baseball
On their own.
Their own, we can't count on that. So you got to spend a lot of time developing players, and then I'm getting off a little bit, but through tryouts, man, they almost got to do a baseball IQ test, or someone needs to find out what kids do, or what they know and what they don't know. And it's okay if they don't know a lot of things. That's why you as a coach, supposed to be developing those minds. That's your job. Develop those minds, develop the passion. And as a coach, the way I'm talking now, I played the game like this. Very enthusiastic. I was a leader on our team. The shortest on the team, but they trusted me to be one of those leaders because I talked a lot. But
I like what you've mentioned this, I don't know, a dozen times in probably every episode, but you're tracking the mistakes in order to fix them, not to hold it against them and say, hey, look how many times you messed up. It's like, hey, this seems to be an issue. How can we fix it? And that is so much more encouraging to a player than just beating them over the head with it.
Yes, you know why? Because that's on us.
Exactly.
This is what the parent paid for.
Exactly.
Us to develop you, help you develop those mistakes, give you the tools to go home, work with it, come back. Like, I can tell you've been working on your game, man. So you got to inspire. You got to coach kids up, man, and stop beating them over the head.
Ethan is more than my podcast partner. He's my son. And like every baseball parent, my first priority was his development as a player. Every year, we'd start out with a new coach and a new team, making new promises, only to end up playing the same old tournaments with little to no practice in between. You know what I'm talking about. That's why I'm so thankful that we found MD&I Academy. I first met Coach Rick over a decade ago when Ethan was just a kid, and I'll never forget the relief I felt watching his first lesson. I knew right then that no matter what team he played for, my son would have amazing, consistent instruction from someone who cared. Rick has trained baseball and softball players at the select, travel, and even college levels, so I knew that Ethan could continue his excellence through training approach for his whole baseball career. He learned hitting, pitching, catching, fielding, and more all in one place. Most of all, he learned to love the greatest game in the world and how to play it with character and integrity. MD&I is a first-class facility with plenty of tunnels for hitting and pitching instruction that open up into large areas for teaching fielding, base running, speed, and agility. They even have a weight room for strength training. So if you're wearing yourself out running all over town to multiple teachers, or worse, you're counting on that new select coach to actually develop your child, you need to check out MD&I Academy today. Go to mdaiacademy.com and contact Coach Rick to learn how you can get all the baseball instruction you need from someone who cares about your favorite player as much as you do at MD&I Academy. So yeah, you're exactly right. And this is why, okay, so I have a couple of encouragements for those who are listening. Number one, if you're a coach, please, I mean, for the love of God, please play some other games other than tournaments.
And practice more than once a week.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
take that time, because otherwise what happens is you're taking a kid who's in their adolescence and you're putting them in an adult situation, which is you either produce or you're done.
Right.
Now, adults, I mean, we've talked about, George, that wasn't easy for you in whether you were in Cincinnati or you're in New York or wherever. It's hard on adults when it's like, producer, you're done. Think about it on kids.
Right.
They're still growing. They're still learning. There's so many things they don't understand yet.
Right. You get labeled.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you sit there and go, all right, well, parents, don't talk to me about playing time. Your kid will either have
Right.
they'll either have the numbers or they won't. And, I'm going to put the best people on the field. And,
That's why we need to have coaches sessions, talk to
Yes.
them about their responsibility. But as a coach, though, I have my team practice at least 2 times a week.
Same
and
here.
One time maybe as a team, then the other's individual. So I have 2 kids like the catchers. Okay, you're going to come 1 to 3. We're going
Yes.
to work on defense.
Yep.
Or the shortstop and second baseman, we'll work on turn a double play.
Right.
So being able to get all that in, and then you have the team to come out to do it. So we're going to do situational play,
Yes.
telling the catcher, okay, how many outs, or knowing the situation at that time. But you got to be able to isolate it, have practices so they can work on it.
Yes, you
So that
gotta
now they're being able to carry it over into the game.
Yes.
If they don't know how to do it, then in the game, they're going to make more mistakes than they should.
Yeah. And so my second encouragement is to parents. And parents, this is the thing. You can't change what baseball has become. As much as we would all love to go back to playing leagues where you play the same team several times in a season and you have a nice longer season and you have time to develop kids, baseball isn't that anymore. Baseball is a pressure cooker that's one tournament after another. And if that's going to be your child's playing experience, get a private teacher, please. Where I grew up in Tip City, Ohio, in the boonies, with it was a small town. There wasn't a lot we played Little League, man.
Right.
Nobody had a private teacher.
Yeah.
Nobody had it just wasn't what it was in the 80s. But I cannot imagine having parented a ball player without a private teacher, because there's no way, even the best coach with the most well-meaning philosophy and the best work ethic, and there are a lot of great youth coaches out there. There really are. They can only do so much. So if your child is serious and passionate about being a baseball player, get a private teacher. Get some private workout.
Specialized, yeah.
It is worth the money. I know that sometimes you'll be like,
Good
okay,
investment.
well,
Great investment.
We got to find this. We got to find, we got to find some money for this or that. Man, I'm telling you, I would much rather have paid for Ethan to take private baseball lessons than I would to have gone on expensive vacations or anything else, because it was better for him in the long run. He learned skills and character traits that he would not have learned any other way from great guys like Rick. And I appreciate that. opportunity. And so I'm saying, if you're a parent, please.
Well, and I know for me, it made it more fun because not only is Rick just a fun guy to be around, but I had somebody dedicated to my success rather than somebody who's in charge of a bunch of kids doing the best they can. I had somebody dedicated to me and invested in whether or not I succeed or fail. And so having that support for me, regardless of what happened in any tournament or what any coach said, I knew I could always come back to Rick, and he was there for me, and I appreciated that. It made it way more fun. I looked forward to going to go see Rick way more than I ever did going to play a game or a practice.
Appreciate it.
That's great.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
So
great.
go
You have
ahead.
to give yourself credit too for seeking out somebody that knowing that you trust what they had to say, to trust your kid with that certain individual and being able to specialize. And I just know Rick is probably the same way as I am. But when a kid comes in to work with me, they have to equal my effort.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
agree.
don't want to have
Yes.
to give more effort than the kid. That's saying that they don't really want it as much. But I tell the kid, I say, you got to equal my effort here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You can't going through the motions, because we're here to help you to get better.
Yes.
You got to want to get better.
Thank you.
Level swing. Let it travel. Wait for your pitch. Be aggressive out there. It's no wonder young players get confused at the plate. What if your son or daughter could learn not only how to hit the ball, but also where to hit it, when to hit it there, and why? George Foster has played baseball at the very highest levels. He was the National League MVP when he hit 52 home runs and 149 RBIs in a single season. He led the major leagues in home runs twice and RBIs 3 times. He was a 5-time All-Star, a Silver Slugger, and he helped the Reds win back-to-back World Series. During his 15-year career, George developed a unique approach to hitting that made him one of the greatest hitters of all time, and now your favorite player can learn it too. That's right, baseball legend George Foster is currently accepting new students. Learn the psychology of hitting, situational hitting, hitting for power, bunting, and more. Every team needs players who can hit, and George explains the game in a way that's easy to understand and exciting to learn. So check out GeorgeFosterBaseball.com to learn how you can apply for private lessons with a member of the Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame. Spots are limited, and the roster will fill up fast, so don't wait. Apply at GeorgeFosterBaseball.com. So I want to kind of move on to our then and now segment here. Well, let's talk what catching was like when you played and how it's different now. Mm-hmm. And Ethan, I'm going to have you jump off here because you have a good insight as to like current techniques and how that's different.
So this is interesting. You see in the MLB now, we're seeing the one knee
down.
a lot,
Yes,
and it's really taken over.
Yeah.
And that was something. Obviously Tony Pena was doing that, and then Manny Sanguillen. Rick, I'm so glad you brought that up because I'd never heard of him.
Yes.
But he was a pioneer to that.
Yeah, they both
were.
were.
So it was really just those two guys.
Yeah.
And then you had Brian Pena, who was not related to Tony,
Nope.
same last name, but also happened to have that unique kind of leg out
Yes, he
catching
did.
style, which is I just think that's ironic.
Yes.
But when I was catching, we didn't really have private catching instructors yet. It wasn't as popular. You would have a hitting guy and you might have a pitching guy, but fielding wasn't quite as prominent at that point. And so I started, with that kind of real narrow stance, just arm out, kind of like that. And now it's becoming a lot more fluid. So I want to give a shout out to my guy, Tyler Stack at Xavier University. I got to have him come in and work on his glove and pick his brain. He's only a couple years younger than I am, maybe 1 or 2. And so I was able to ask him, how did you learn this style? And he said, man, I watched MLB catchers. Yeah. I watched spring training drills, and I just tried to copy it as much as possible. And he actually was able to talk to his high school coach and kind of change some of the procedures there. He's like, because coach, I'm seeing this at the MLB level. So that was really cool for me to see a guy who went out and found the technique rather than waited for somebody to come teach it to him. But catching is very, very different now. You're not just holding a target out there. There's a lot more emphasis on framing and stealing runs, which I think is funny because we're starting to get more robotic with balls and strikes. Yet we're emphasizing framing more now than ever, and I think that's a really good thing. It definitely seems to be a position that requires more fluid athleticism now than it did at the time. And also seeing more emphasis on offense from the catchers. Everything's about analytics, and they want the big bat back there. And so sometimes now you're seeing guys who are good hitters and not great catchers, and they're trying to turn them into good catchers because they're good hitters, and they want to try to keep that bat in the lineup. So I know a guy like Austin Wells. He was not a good catcher coming out of Arizona, and the Yankees just put out a good special on him in his journey, and he had to work really, really hard to be able to hold his own back there. I know Tyler Stevenson's gone through some of the same stuff. Guys with great bats, even Gary Sanchez, guys with great bats, and they're trying to develop the catching so that they can be of value defensively as well. So just some different things that I'm seeing.
George, how would you say, like, go back to some of the guys we've talked about that you played with versus maybe some of the guys you scouted when you were scouting for the Reds? How have you seen that position change?
Drastically. The Posey rule now, you have to have a lane. Before, you make sure your life insurance is paid up when you're going to score at home plate. But the thing is that nowadays, I know it's to prevent injuries, but it's taking a little bit of fun out of the game because you're not able to go and collide with the catcher. And if the catcher doesn't give you a lane, then now you're safe. Yeah. So sometimes we get to that ridiculous side of it, and it's just that the catchers, they don't have as much chance to get the guy out because of that lane if you're not in that particular lane. And then, the framing, the catchers, they're stealing more strikes. They're not really strikes, but they have the quickness of the hand that the umpire doesn't really see. Yeah. So it's stealing more strikes for the pitcher. So that's a big change in itself. But I say, scoring like Willie Mays or Bonds and those guys, they lived to go and knock a catcher down. and that's why the Dodgers always went to get guys, Socha, Yeager, guys who ready to bash. Gary Carter, John Stearns, he played football, and him and Dave Parker had a collision at the plate. And you thought that Dave Parker would get the best of it, but I think he got his cheek smashed in by John Stearns. And John Stearns jumped up, a little bit dazed and like, who's next? But this guy, he was a linebacker. I forget which football team he played with, but this guy was crazy back there. So sometimes we talk about you need to have a high IQ. Maybe not. You don't want to have a high IQ. You're like
crazy IQ.
You're crazy. Come on, who's next up there? But like I say, that having the lane because of the Posey rule, the framing, it's much different now than when we played. And so, but I don't. Like Ethan was saying, they looking more for offense than just defense before. Like Jerry Grody more for defense because they want to make sure that he control what the pitcher's throwing and being able to eliminate a lot of pass ball wild pitches. And I see guys. Well, Sanchez, I know he had because I guess he had led the world in wild pitches or pass balls. So they moved him to another position. But you got to want it. You got to be hard-nosed back there, being able to work at it. And I find that Tyler Stevenson, I think he probably from swinging the bat, oblique problem. But you got to be flexible back there. But you got to maybe take yoga or whatever to be loose back there because it's not an easy position to play.
Well, I can remember even just as a kid in the 80s playing Little League, they told us straight up, okay, so if the guy's coming in, this is how you block the plate. Like, I mean, that was a skill. Like, you had to be ready for that kind of thing. And that was the toughness. I think the other thing about catchers is you've got to eat, sleep, and breathe it. You got to love it. Yeah. You got to love it. Like, I could not wait to get the gear on, and it saddened me to take it off. If you got a kid who's catching and he's like, I got to put the gear on, I got to put him somewhere else. You got to have the kid that eats dirt for breakfast and cannot wait to get the helmet on. That's the catcher that you're looking for.
And also, you got to be able to take some foul tips off the cup.
Oh, there you go. There you go. That's true.
I think Johnny Bench broke about 7 cups.
Well, I remember I saw an interview with, it was a kind of a press roll during the 77 year. It's on YouTube. And they interviewed all the different guys, or several of them anyway. And Johnny was talking about how, it was kind of disappointing. Like you were having the year of your life, but yet the team was kind of struggling with the pitching and the whatever.
Right.
And he was admitting to the person who was interviewing. He's like, yeah, I probably get a little too caught up in the defense. I think about a lot about the defense and whatever. And he said, I got to remember that I had, there's an offensive side to this too. And I got to really pick up my production there. But, yeah, it's true. Like when you're a catcher, defense is everything.
But that's go ahead.
No, I was going to say they have it was 2-dimensional there because they wanted you for offense and also defense, and then they had a time frame that I just want you to just be 1-dimensional, just focus on the catching, whatever is a surplus or bonus if you're to swing the bat. But nowadays it's back to I don't care, just being able to stop the ball, but being able to swing the bat. We need some offense from behind the plate.
Yeah, and that was the interesting thing about Devin Mesoraco. Later in his career, when he went to the Mets in 2019, I think it was, he was catching guys like DeGrom and Zach Wheeler and Noah Syndergaard. I mean, just a really great a really great rotation there. Yep. And he got traded mid-season, and a couple weeks in, DeGrom's like, no, this is my guy. Like, I want Devin Mesoraco to be my catcher. And so he had said heading into 2019 was his last year. He was traded before that. Anyway, he had said he was in the game mentally, but his body just couldn't hold up.
Yeah.
But he still loved the strategy. He loved handling the pitchers. He really loved that, but like you were saying, his body just couldn't hold up to it. So you do have to eat, sleep, and breathe it like that. And it's interesting you're saying about Johnny Bench getting caught up in the defense, because if you have a catcher that's not caught up in the defense, then you got other problems.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to let in more runs than you drive in, so you're defeating the purpose. But back to when I talk about Ted Simmons, he still did a good enough job behind the plate to keep guys from scoring. And then, of course, he's going to provide a lot of offense, being a switch hitter, and, of course, being in the Hall of Fame. But this guy, they didn't give him much credit, but he worked at it.
Severely underrated. Yeah.
There's another guy that I coached against and my son played against and played with him before is Luke Maley.
Luke,
Luke could hit, man. Been knowing Luke since he was about 11 years old, and our team and kids played against each other for years, from 11 to 18, and along with Tucker Barnhart, we all ran the same travel baseball circles. And Luke could hit, man. He can really hit. And then when he went to Kentucky, he hit. And I don't know, when he got to the major leagues, I think a lot of things changed,
No, he has I don't know if he had it before, but he got away with it. But he has a hitch in his swing. And I remember when he was with Toronto.
Yes.
It was within a day's time. I was scheduled, because he was in Dunedin, and I was in St. Pete. We were supposed to meet that day to just talk about it, but we never did get a chance to talk about it. But just having a hitch in that swing, it makes a big difference. He's going to be late on that fastball.
He's a big guy.
Kid. Yeah.
Yes, he is about 6'3".
Yeah.
But, he's a basketball player. Yeah.
So was Carlton Fisk.
Yes. He's a basketball player. We used to play against Luke in tournaments. All the time. He was a big kid.
I think it was interesting. The other thing I read about Carlton Fisk is he considered himself to be part of the pitching staff. Like he was, he wasn't in addition to, he was part of the pitching staff. Like you're not doing this without me. Like this is, we're an integral member of that. And I thought that was kind of
that makes sense though.
That's a great mindset.
Well, you got a couple of guys. I think Benji Molina was he James Shields' dedicated catcher, or David Price's dedicated?
David Price.
down with the Rays.
Yeah, with the Rays.
And so you had a couple of guys that were glued to a specific pitcher, and they could carve out a little career just by being guys with that.
That's what Tim McCarver with Steve Carlton. Steve Carlton wanted McCarver. McCarver did something that really is psychological. So he got to admit that when the ball hits it really popped. And so Carlton, it made it sound like it's throwing hard. So, I wanted someone that make the catcher, make the mitt pop.
Yes.
And then, of course, McCarver said, Steve, you should get rid of that curveball. and go to the slider. And he went from being 15 and 14 to 26 and 9.
Yeah.
So that slider, I don't know what, I forget what year, but from that time frame, he started accumulating Hall of Fame numbers.
Yeah.
And
Slider's hard to hit if you are.
well, from a lefty,
Yeah,
that slider's
lefty, boys.
because you see
On
it
the back-
coming in, you
back
think it's
foot.
going to be there by the time. It seemed like it repelled that wood, but that was the pitch that got him to the Hall of Fame. That slider.
Yeah.
I thought about this. Javi Lopez.
Yeah.
Oh, there you
Oh
go.
yeah, with the Braves.
Yes. He
Yeah.
had that staff, man, of Maddox and all of those guys. Javi Lopez.
That's a handful, right? That's
Yeah.
a big responsibility, right,
Right.
there.
Yes,
But you
man.
have the staff. You didn't think about who was catching.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true.
And he had some good offensive numbers
Yes,
as well.
he did.
So got to
He could
remember
swing
Javi
it.
Lopez.
Yeah, Javi Lopez.
But yeah,
He had that one good year. That good year, then I think it hurt his knee.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
interesting subject to talk about. We'll come back to catching in the fall. This will be
Yes.
another fun discussion. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our talk about catching today and some of the remembrances and some of the insights that the guys have shared. And if you do, give us a like, give us a good rating somewhere where you listen to the podcast, and leave us a comment. Let us know, if you're liking the show or if you have questions, something you want us to kick around, talk about on the table. We're happy to do that. But until we get together next time, have a great week, and we'll see you real soon. We hope you've enjoyed the Complete Game Podcast, the show that's all about baseball. New episodes drop each week, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. If you'd like to support the podcast, consider leaving us a 5-star rating, or better yet, drop us a comment or a question and let us know what you think. The Complete Game Podcast is produced and distributed by 2 Creative Digital Marketing. Check us out at 2creativedigital.com. On behalf of Ethan, Coach Rick, and the Silver Slugger George Foster, I'm Greg Duncan saying have a great week, and we'll see you real soon.